the passion and the devotion that these people have for the cause. And it has showed up in spades.
In this case, rather than a product or a service, you're actually selling a belief or a cause.
I think there's an opportunity to make sure that we leverage and piggyback on that and continue to shift those perceptions.
Your priorities have changed so that you can actually endeavor to continue to communicate with how important the advocacy aspect of things or the supply chain aspect of things.
Bird's Eye View.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to episode 19. Wow, 19 of Bird's Eye View. I'm happy to have you here. We've been having a great run of fantastic guests, and we've been getting a ton of reaction. You know, people commenting or asking questions or even asking us to put them in touch with some of our guests. And I'm really happy to see that that's happening, because ultimately that's what this was intended for. It was a way of communicating in a time when communication's been changing. Hope you're still enjoying it, and I'm sure you're going to enjoy today's episode. Well, you know what? We've talked a lot about food as it relates to what's been happening in this past year. And I think at the beginning, we talked about how some of us weren't eating well or eating right, and it was contributing to maybe our mental health. There's a real important aspect of food that I wanted to talk about today. And so we brought on a guest who would be perfect to discuss just that. Sylvie Pelletier is the Chief Marketing and Communications Officer for Food Banks Canada. And she's become a friend of mine after many years of working together in various capacities. And I'm excited to introduce and bring her on here today. So Sylvie, welcome to Bird's Eye View.
Bonjour, Kyle.
Bonjour. Thank you for joining us. Sylvie, you, as mentioned, have a very important position at Food Banks Canada, particularly in a year like this year where communications has taken driving control of everything that we're doing. You're a veteran of the marketing world, even though you're only 32 years old. You've spent time agency side with Wonderman, you've been client side, you've been in the financial sector for almost 20 years. But how is your role as a Chief Marketing and Communications Officer for a not-for-profit, particularly Food Banks Canada, different from your other positions in the private sector?
Well, I like the veteran label, but actually what I would say is that there's a lot more similarities than differences. At the end of the day, as a marketer, always looking to increase awareness, always looking to shift perceptions. You're trying to encourage people to take action. So those things are all the same. You're also looking to influence people, right? You have different stakeholders in the organization. So I had the same challenges or the same opportunities when I was working in a large organization that was all owned by the same entity, like CIBC. It's everybody's under the same umbrella. You still had to go and influence stakeholders, and it's the same thing in a very decentralized model where you have different entities, and that's what we find here. One of the differences, not so much in my role, but I think in the people who are working in the food banking sector is the passion and the devotion that these people have for the cause. And it has showed up in spades during the last 6 months.
Right. Yeah, I would expect that. And I guess just going back to what you said at the very beginning, it is the same. There's still, measurable leads and conversions, but in this case, rather than a product or a service, you're actually selling a belief or a cause, and the result that goes with that. Right?
Yeah, exactly. And in this case, it's also a service. We are, the network is serving our neighbors in need. So
right. On that note, I guess food banks are often compared, and I think mistakenly, to the things we see in the movies like soup kitchens and the long lineups, the general perception or association. But what are the differentiators that Food Banks Canada offers that are not what we see or what we envision them to be?
Well, it's interesting because I joined Food Banks Canada about 2 years ago, and even myself, I had a lot of misconceptions. I didn't really have a solid understanding of what was a food bank. And so there's a number of misconceptions out there. And one of them is the fact that food banks are just local. It's that little place maybe in a dark corner of your neighborhood that is serving people, but it's not. We are a network of over 3,000 food banks and community organizations that all work together, whether it's at the local level, at the provincial level, or at the national level. We all work together for the common purpose of helping our neighbors in need. So that's one of the misconceptions. I think the other one is this sense that food bank is unsophisticated, and they're not. These are sophisticated operations. You have different types of food banks in the network. Some operate as distribution centers, and those are logistically are powerhouses. You know, they have walk-in fridges, they have forklifts because they have tons of food in their warehouse. They have refrigerated trucks so that you can send food out in a safe way. We have expertise that I didn't know about. It's about preventing, not only relieving hunger today, but it's about preventing hunger tomorrow. So we have research, we have advocacy, people who are working and working with government to advocate for policy change, because that's important to get people out of poverty. But I think the most important one for me is that some people think that food banks is just about giving food. And there's so much more to that. It definitely starts with food, but there's a humanity in the way that clients are dealt with, where they feel seen, they feel supported, they feel part of a community. There are other services that are given where they can help along their journey, whether it's tax clinics, financial literacy, whether it's cooking. So there's really, really a lot more under the label of a food bank than what people typically think of.
Yeah, sounds like it. Jeez. And I've been exposed to some of it, but I wasn't even really thinking about the supply chain that exists would probably rival the supply chain of some of the world's biggest retailers once it's all said and done, right? So, and then, government relations and things like that. The advocacy and policy are probably just as important because it's looking down the road as opposed to where we're at right now, right?
Well, because basically food bank usage, it's rooted in poverty. And so you need to get people out of poverty so that they stop using the food banks. And that's where policy changes are going to help.
Right. Switching gears just a little bit, given the current global health conditions, we've heard, a ton about food banks this year on a global level, really, and more really than ever before. We're getting closer to winter. It's going to be a second wave if we're not already in it right now. The more traditional periods of giving are actually right now, Thanksgiving, Christmas, and the periods of the year around that. So I would expect that food banks would need to have that immediate support of society as a whole more than ever right now. Is that accurate?
Absolutely. Support continues to be needed. One of the things we have to remember, though, is that prior to this crisis, food banks across Canada, they were seeing 1.1 million visits per month to food banks. So the problem was already real. And then with this global health situation, it's just compounded the issue. It's compounded because the food banks have had to adapt their operations. They've had to manage for physical distancing. They've lost volunteers because of physical distancing, or because their volunteers were older Canadians who are more vulnerable. At the same time, as you were seeing business closures, you saw new clients coming in. So it's had a major impact. But now, as we look ahead, the income support that the governments have put in are coming to an end. And when those things are going to happen, we're concerned about what's ahead. The food bank in Calgary did a study in 2017 when they looked at, for every 100 new people that was making a demand or that was applying for a social assistance, they saw 57 new clients at the food bank. So we know that when there are layoffs, when there are business closures, we know that has an impact on food banks. And on top of that, now we have to contend with, how do you serve people in cold weather?
Right, cold weather while socially distancing. And
exactly.
So speaking about profound impact, we've seen a variety of celebrities jump on the cause this year. Ryan Reynolds, some of the cast of Schitt's Creek, a variety of other, particularly in North America, but again, I think even global stars that have come to support, food banks. And that's been in Canada as well as in the US. Have you been able to continue to capitalize on that publicity? Time goes on and the novelty wears off, so to speak?
Well, I think, we have been humbled by the response of Canadians, and that's all Canadians, right. The general public, corporations, celebrities, to help continues to be there. We do have some people who come back and say, okay, how can we continue to help? So absolutely, that support is there, and we're counting on that support to continue to be there because the need continues.
You'll have Ryan Reynolds support, I'm sure. You'll have Kyle Kotack support, I'm sure. And I think if you
Can I get an autograph?
Yes, 100%. Sure, no problem. I guess moving forward from that, 2020, it's brought a ton of surprises with it. We've already discussed that many of them impacted your operations, your goals, opportunities. And, Skylar and myself are very proud and happy to work with food banks in a variety of endeavors that you've got going on. But there are things that, you even had planned internally, whether it's, the continued evolution of your brand that most brands have, enhanced digital environment that, again, a lot of brands have been exploring. But it led to a lot of that being paused in as you tackled the environment that you were left to deal with. So what does the future look like from a marketing perspective, and how has that changed how it looked at the end of 2019 to how it looks now?
Definitely, the crisis has meant for Food Banks Canada and the network has meant a tremendous increase in workloads. Like on the one hand, many charities have been disseminated. They've been impacted and are having layoffs. We are not in that situation, which is a good thing. But it's for a different reason, and that's because many of our fellow Canadians need support. So we've had to really prioritize and look hard, and that's like in any business when there's increased workload, you have to look at how do you reprioritize stuff. So it's not that, and partly we're doing that because we're really concerned about the welfare of our staff. Right. They've been working full out, and so that's why certain projects got paused. It's not because they're not important. I think it's just a question of timing. So they are still on the horizon. And I think as we head into 2021, I'm losing track of time. What year is it? As we head into 2021, I think there's an opportunity. At Food Banks Canada, we've certainly, one of the things is the profile has been elevated, and people are now knowing a little bit more and are being more aware of the work that is being done. So we need to make sure that we leverage and piggyback on that and continue to shift those perceptions. When I was talking about those misconceptions out there, this is an opportunity for us to shift from simply being aware of Food Banks Canada and the network, but really understanding the work that we do.
It's so interesting. I have this conversation, I would probably say 24 times a year with various people about various causes. And a lot of times there's a bit of a reluctance to donate or support because a lot of people have the belief that, well, the money gets tied up in administration or the money gets tied up here, it doesn't actually wind up seeing the person that it's intended for. Whether that's for health reasons or hunger reasons or otherwise, your communications may change, your priorities have changed, so that you can actually endeavor to continue to communicate with how important the advocacy aspect of things or the supply chain aspect of things, that every dollar donated does not necessarily mean soup in somebody's hand or food in somebody's hand, but it means a lot of other things that could actually prevent this or help with this, engage in some other type of crisis moving forward, or just the real world moving forward, I guess, right?
Absolutely. And I think, again, there is a need right now, and the Canadian are responding to that. But at the end of the day, when Canadians understand even more about what food banking is doing and helping our neighbors in need, I think there's going to be more pride and comfort in continuing to support an organization like ours.
And seeing the results, which we could see profoundly, right?
Yeah.
Forgetting about the year, it's not mattering now. I'm going to talk about the future. We've, had the opportunity to work together on a variety of digitally focused projects. And the reality seems to be that more and more of your communication, like a lot of other brands, is going to be done online moving forward. Is the interaction between food banks donors or users even going to change as we further digitize our environments?
Partly the reason why brands are shifting or including more and more the digital environment is that's where the target audiences are. They are important component of the communications toolkit. And the important thing here is to remain relevant and to nurture those relationships, right? So it's not once you've had, an interaction with someone, it's like, how do you make them feel good about continuing to have a relationship with you?
Yeah. Yeah, it's about re-engaging, right? Engaging is only the very first step.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So if our audience is looking to support food bank, it's a question that's come up, and I don't even know that I can actually articulate the answer, so you're the perfect person. What distinguishes Food Banks Canada from other organizations that we hear about, like Daily Bread Food Bank, Feed Ontario?
Well, it's interesting, and that's part of the confusion why we need to help, the public understand what is Food Banks Canada and the Food Banking Network. The two organizations you've mentioned, Feed Ontario and Daily Bread Food Banks, are part of this network. They are just at different levels. So Daily Bread is the local food bank in Toronto. Feed Ontario is the provincial association, and we are the national association. So they are part of the 3,000 plus strong organization in this network, all working together to serve our neighbors in need. So I would say supporting any of those organizations is all having the same impact, is helping those Canadian in need.
That's great. That's great to know, because I know it's even come up in a couple of interactions amongst Skylar clients. I know that Magnotta Winery, for example, and Electra Utilities were both had arrangements to donate to food banks, supposed to be more on local food banks as opposed to the more national level. And so in donating to the local food banks, it was still impacting the exact same way, more or less, right?
Absolutely. So when the national work that we do is really in support of the food banking network. So we work closely with Daily Bread, as we do with Feeding Ontario and the many other organizations. It's a big ecosystem.
A lot more than just the soup kitchen, as we discussed.
Absolutely.
Is there anything else that we can do other than just donate dollars? Understanding that dollars these days are limited in a lot of ways. Can we volunteer? Can we offer support through our businesses?
Before the crisis, before the global health conditions, we always said food, funds, and time were all valuable resources for food banks. I think these days we have to check. Right, because the needs of the different food banks may vary. Some organizations are starting to bring in volunteers. Some need to retool their operations. Some need to hire more people in their warehouse because they lost all of their volunteers, but they need to do it in a safe way. So I would say contact your local food bank, contact us to see how you can best help. Although I would say that the dollars stretch a long way, right? Because we typically buy at bulk rate, and we get much better rates than an individual might buy at the supermarket.
Right. And on that note, I guess, has the corporate support been even stronger, along with the additional support from, individual Canadians?
Yes, absolutely. Throughout, again, we've been humbled by the response of Canadians, whether it's the general public, corporations, even the government investing through us has been a tremendous help.
We talk about it often, but I think that we know that we would be successful, you'd be successful in what you do, and we would be successful in helping you do that if one day we could say that there are no more food banks and you could actually go out of business. But the reality is that's probably not going to happen for a little while. So continue good luck and continue support as we try to make that happen.
Absolutely.
As we shift away from, all the seriousness of work and everything that's going on in the world, you've been quarantined for quite a while now. I know that, I've gotten very used to seeing you in your living room, and I'm not sure how when I see you back in the office one day. But are there any more funny stories that you could share with us that have happened to you over the last 6 months or so?
Well, I was actually thinking I was going to demonstrate my funny story, and it's not happening. But basically, my cat, McCabe, has taken a liking to Zoom meetings. And typically, you know what? I bet you it's because I have the earphones on. He's not hearing you. Because typically when he hears the voices, he jumps on and basically photobombs it. So you usually have the head kind of in here, or walking on my but now I figured it out. It's because of the headphones.
Well, we'll have to re-record this one day without the headphones and see if we can replicate it.
Yeah. So you
That's
can.
funny. Sylvie, listen, I want to thank you for your time. I want to thank you for coming on. It's been very insightful. I hope people really do get a strong understanding of the differences between our perception of what food banks are, or the general perception, and what they actually are. But good luck, continued success to a certain extent, I guess, depending on how we measure it as the rest of the year goes on. And I look forward to hopefully making continued progress this year and next.
Thanks, Kyle. It's been great talking with you, and thanks for the opportunity to share the story.
Thank you, everybody, for joining us. If you are looking to support Food Banks Canada, please check out their website. As Sylvie mentioned, if you're looking to donate, to a more local cause, your local food bank would probably be right up the same alley and part of the same organization. And even from a business perspective, if there's anything that your business would like to do to be involved in this cause, especially at this time of the year when it's generally more needed than ever, but particularly this year, give me a call. Let me know. Shoot me a line, and be happy to put you in touch with the right people at Food Banks Canada to make that happen. Thank you very much for joining. We'll talk to you soon. Take care.
Bird's Eye View.